It's Not Another Buffalo Podcast, hosted by three of the most underqualified sports personalities this side of the canal. With John.
All you people out there who are like, these idiots don't know anything. First of all, you're right. And second of all,
I'm just a dad talking in a closet, but I'm just saying.
And Brando.
We have this trust built on whatever it is, like Bibles and gold bricks and whatever Brandon Bean's drinking over there.
all right, welcome back to Not Another Buffalo Podcast. I'm John. I'm here with my buddy Brando.
What's up?
Here on a Tuesday evening, getting through it. This episode is brought to you guys by Small City Realty. If you're looking to buy, sell, or manage property in Western New York, you got to call our guy, Zach Korzelius, at 585-409-1088. That's 585-409-1088. Now, it's been a crazy week because we actually called Zach up this week because Zach is our local expert realtor because we were inquiring about a golf course that was for sale in Batavia, and of course, this hasn't happened. It was a dream for a second there.
It didn't work out, but it
was already under contract by the time we got to it. But it looked like it was about to be a thing there for a second. And
it would have been a cool thing.
That would have been very exciting.
Yes.
This podcast would have had a different setting for a lot of stuff.
You ever see the Tee to Green, Brian Koziel? They go to different courses and they do the recording.
Yeah, that's a really
we could have
great.
done that. We could have done that.
Yeah. Oh my God. Glow ball. We had tons of great ideas. We were going to totally redo a golf course and make a video series out of it and document
it was like
a
9-hole course, nice little bigger than
crazy.
a par 3 little executive course, and it would have been perfect in our backyard. Played growing up.
Yeah, that's where we learned how to golf.
Yeah.
Although I would consider myself still learning quite a bit when it comes to golf.
Always learning still. That's why you play. It's like one of those things you have to always be humbled and figure out what you did differently. You got to do something differently when you mess up. And when I'm playing, and I'm lucky to be able to do this, but I always want to hit. If I mess up a shot, I want to hit another one. I don't have to count it. It doesn't have to be anything. I'll take the drop. I'll drop wherever you want me to, but let me hit it again while it's fresh in my brain why I messed up. And when I'm playing by myself, I'm always doing that. I
did that 6 times today, and I was playing with somebody. So yeah. You
gotta, your golf buddies can't be squares, but they need to know that you got to practice. You got to get better.
Yeah. So we are still Not Another Buffalo Podcast and not a golf owners podcast or a golf course owners podcast yet. So,
but Zach was cool. He helped us out, so he'll help you out. Give him a call.
I was gonna say, called Zach right up. He's like, I'll get on the phone with him. I know this guy. Zach knows everybody in Batavia.
It moves fast.
He is just a great guy to know. And by the way, also this show is brought to you by the Jkorz Agency for all your insurance needs. So for any of your insurance needs in Western New York, call Zach up as well. Same number, 585-409-1088. He's the dude. He knows everybody. He's worked with everybody. But
well,
had we bought a golf course, he would have been the agent that we bought it through.
Yes.
So there's that. But anyway, so Brandon, you got to catch me up on what's going on with this Sabres off season, because I feel like I was expecting to see things, and all I'm seeing is ESPN notifications about Stamkos going to Nashville, and nobody's going to they signed a goaltender. Is he going to be the number 3?
Yeah.
And
maybe
so bunch of third line and fourth line players.
Right. Here's what's happening. That's the Sabres free agency, man. That was me yawning into the mic. The move to
the
trade
hilarious
back
part
in the
about
draft.
that is that I didn't know if you were actually yawning, because
a little bit.
Sometimes when we do this show, it's 8:30 Eastern. Brando's ready for bed. Sometimes you just got to get a yawn in. I cut it out when I edit it and stuff like that.
Well,
but sometimes you just got to get it in.
It worked out because I had to yawn, but it was perfect for the snooze of the Sabres offseason. So it was a good transition here.
Nice. Wow. Killing 2 birds with 1 stone on this show.
Beautiful. Yes. So it was disappointing. The trade back into the draft from 11 to 14 with Mike Greer, former Buffalo Sabre and the GM of the San Jose Sharks. You would think drafting 14th, you're going to get a comparable player, but they got the 2nd round pick, and then they go out and they get this bruiser. I don't even remember his name. He plays for Washington. He had 6 goals last year, but he'll play on their 4th line for a 2nd round pick. That was an interesting value trade. And then you overpay Justin Zucker. He's making $5 million a year now, but you got to pay a lot of money to get the players to come to Buffalo because nobody wants to come here. We don't exist in the world, I guess, whatever. So
yeah,
fair enough when you miss the playoffs for 13 years, but no splashy trades. They drafted a guy that I don't know from somewhere that I don't know because it's the NHL draft and that's how prospects go. Might be a little disrespectful to the guy. I don't know if you want to pull his name up at some point, but we
won't need to know it for like 3 more years, right? I mean, barring a high first round pick, we're not going to hear about this guy for another 3 years, right?
And to get Bo Byram at the trade deadline, Kevin Adams shipping off Casey Middlestat, but now you let Peyton Krebs be the third line center, but Krebs didn't really show anything. So now you need another center like Casey Middlestat. So if you think about it from 2 years ago, that team that almost snuck into the playoffs, they had 30 goals from Olofsson, 30 goals from Cousins, 60 points from Casey Middlestat, and those are all gone. That production has not been replaced. If you look at the additions to the roster, you have this prospect pipeline exploding. It's clogged. You got to get a snake, but there's nowhere to stuff the snake. I think the Sabres have like 28 players under the age of 22 under contract. It's a crazy number, and I don't even think the contract limit goes to the number that they have. So they didn't trade a prospect. They didn't trade their pick. Kevin Adams said he's trying. But then, Jeff Skinner gets bought out and he's going to go score 100 points and win the cup in Edmonton now. Just imagine him playing on Connor McDavid's line or Leon Draisaitl, even Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. You put him on any of those lines, he's going to do great. So we didn't replace his production. It reminds me very similar of the Bills, how they kind of deteriorated a little bit and a little bit and a little bit every year and tried to replace this production, but never did. The Sabres have tried to replace Chris Drury and Daniel Briere's production for 16 years now, and they've been failing. So it's been tough, kind of a snooze fest. And the teams around them are just getting better. Ottawa's getting better. Boston's getting better. Tampa might be moving laterally, but Detroit is in the same boat as the Sabres. Fans are really mad at Steve Yzerman. I know this is not a Detroit talk, but, icon, legend in the city. He's not really doing anything. It's the exact same boat as the Sabres. They got Patrick Kane to come back, but there's no big moves happening here. The biggest trade was with Tampa because they had to get some cap space, but this is about it. NHL free agency lasts about 2 days, and then it's pretty much done. And so nothing crazy.
It's the meme with the guy with the stick poking the rock, going do something. Yeah. But so I don't know. I mean, I try to be optimistic because that Sabres team 2 years ago was like, third in scoring in the NHL? Can we just get back to that? And now we have good goaltending-ish, right? So it's like you put those two things together, that should be 90 points, right?
Yeah. 90 is not enough. You need 95.
Wouldn't 90 have been enough this past year?
Yeah, it's the lowest point total for the 8th seed to make the playoffs in like 20 years.
Right. Just our luck. We can't even limp to 90. Love that. So one game away 2 years ago too, right? Yeah. So
no, just once. They've only missed by a game once.
Yeah, just 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
That wasn't this past year.
No, they sucked this year. And you hope that you can get Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen on a contract because he's a restricted free agent still, and you got James Reiner and you got Devin Levi. So you're going to split 80 games 3 ways. Luukkonen plays 50, Levi plays 20, Reimer gets 10. We'll see.
Yeah.
You're going to need something from somebody that's never done it before. So Jack Quinn's got to stay healthy, score 30 goals. Peterka's going to need 30 goals. Maybe you get Rosick or Kula. I don't even know all these prospects' names. It's tricky. Somebody's going to have to come in and play good as a rookie, and that's scary to bet on. So
Right.
But
well, as we can see, Sabres are probably going to have a lot of weaknesses in this upcoming year. But we were talking about weaknesses for this Buffalo Bills team coming up. And I think that there might be some good debates in store for what the Bills' biggest weakness might be coming into this season, because there's definitely multiple areas that you can look at. And I'm going to throw this caveat in off the bat. Like, by far, linebacker was their biggest weakness last year going into the season, and then Terrell Bernard turns out to be one of the brightest spots and one of the biggest surprises of the season in that position. So
it's funny that you mentioned that from last year, and I'm on Buffalo Lowdown's website, and Ronnie Eastman wrote an article. Is Bills wide receiver depth their biggest weakness coming into this season? And they did talk about linebacker with Matt Milano, AJ Klein, but then they got into the receivers with Diggs, Davis, and Shakir, Khalil. And the quote on here is outside of Stephon Diggs, there aren't too many pass catchers on the roster that strike fear into the heart of defensive coordinators. Gabe Davis will have his occasional big game, but he isn't much of a volume guy, as his single game high from receptions in 2022 was only 6, which he had twice. So, and we saw that pan out. We saw Gabe get zeros on the board a few times, and it was an issue. But John, I don't know if you want to start off with what you think is the biggest weakness, but I know what I want to say, but I will wait and I'll let you go first this time.
Well, maybe I don't want to go first because, well, I don't know. I honestly, I came into this discussion with a completely open mind. So I really don't have like one thing. Like I want to hear what you have to say, and then I'll kind of decide and maybe we can go back and forth. I don't know.
Okay. But I feel like, and it's super funny because it could backfire and turn out to be one of their biggest strengths, because I feel like it does this for the Bills specifically under this regime. And maybe this is a cop out to say Sean McDermott's their biggest weakness, but I think you see him blunder these games in Kansas City in 13 seconds and the AFC Championship game. And you could even say the Jacksonville game this year in London. Again, they tried. Give him an A for effort, but it just didn't work.
Does this have to, like, is the DeMar Hamlin fake punt coming into your reasoning here? Is that that's probably the most recent example, right? I mean, that's literally the last game.
And then was it 12 men on the field? Like, he just doesn't get a flack for that. And they fire Ken Dorsey. It's just like, it wasn't Sean McDermott's fault. It wasn't the head coach's fault that the special teams coach messed up, but we're going to fire the offensive coordinator so we don't have to talk about it with Sean. We're just going to talk about Ken Dorsey the next day. So, if there's 11 guys on the field and they missed that kick, maybe Ken Dorsey's still the coordinator here. Maybe we don't have Joe Brady because he went somewhere else. The whole thing could be different, but that was a huge blunder. And if it is the special teams coordinator's fault, then it's your head coach's fault by default with him under this structure of command. So,
and likewise, the flip side of that is, like, when your coordinators are doing good, your head coach seat is safe. Yeah. Like, I kind of wonder about, like, just thinking about what you said, like, those 2020, 2021 season where the offense was borderline unstoppable, Josh Allen put up career numbers those years. Like, it kind of covers up, like, having that offense and winning games by an average of whatever, 10 points. Those huge margins of victory because they were stomping teams, because they were putting up points like crazy. That covers up any kind of head coaching deficiencies. Like, if you can just keep scoring touchdowns, then, like, your coaching decisions aren't going to influence which way the games go. And now that the offense is kind of slowed down to what it is now, there's been some struggles. Games are tighter. They're in more one-score games. Then those critical decisions, those forks in the road become a lot more important when it comes to coaching decisions. So,
it's much more magnified.
If we had a high-flying offense here in 2024, then, that's probably the best thing that Sean McDermott could do to keep his seat safe, even more so than his coaching decisions, honestly.
Exactly, because if Joe Brady struggles like Ken Dorsey struggles, how many coordinators do you get to go through as a head coach? Like, if you're a GM, you might get 2 coaches. If you're a coach, how many coordinators do you get to go through? If you're something is struggling, McDermott and Leslie Frazier were interesting because McDermott famously takes over play calling when he's pissed, right? And this is the part that is I kind of bit of a hypocrite, because McDermott is lights out play caller on defense. He's such a good defensive mind head coach.
Most of the time, because we give him so much credit when he does really good things and he makes, opposing quarterbacks look bad. And we're like, oh, this
that blitz
great
on Russell Wilson,
exactly. It's like, what are you doing? And some other times too, like, not just that game, obviously, but there's been some questionable decisions.
I'm thinking as a whole, if you're taking an overview as a whole career, I mean, the defense against the Bengals was tough to allow all those, you're playing 10 yards off, but that was Leslie Frazier's defense also. So we're giving McDermott a couple of, the amount that he has done it on his own is different than what he's had a good squad around him. Bobby Babich is great. And, losing John Butler as the secondaries coach could be a big deal, but you might see Kaiir Elam blossom. I don't know. But to see the defense being tested, and we could go into other weaknesses on this team, maybe in the secondary, maybe in the line, but McDermott is going to need to use his juice to coach them up and to get more production out of them than maybe they would be held accountable for without him. So this unit has to work as a whole. But again, if McDermott can turn this into a top 10 defense again, it's going to, he could have an overarching solid season, and 2 bad calls could wreck this for him, right? You know, if 2 bad blitzes, soft coverage when he needs to be pressing, whatever, 2 bad play calls and they lose a couple close games because of his decision making is enough to call it a weakness, because the best teams don't do that. Andy Reid doesn't do that. So
I have like 30 thoughts that popped into my head, and I didn't want to cut you off during any of that, so bear with me as I work through them. Another thing about like weakness possibly becoming a strength, I think that this defense is going to be young. They're going to be inexperienced. They're going to make mistakes early on in the season. I fully anticipate that. But also that youth being a strength as well, because you're not going to have guys who are in their 30s running around there, and, they're going to be less prone to injury. Those guys, whether it was injuries or everybody's beat up on a week-to-week basis, obviously it affects your body the more you get older, as evidenced by all of our back pain in our late 20s already. So there's that.
Early 20s, all of my 20s, late teens.
Right. But also Bobby Babich as a first-time defensive coordinator, whether or not he calls the plays, I think that could be a ginormous strength, because everything that Bobby Babich touches turns to gold. So, I mean, he's the Terrell Bernard linebackers coach. Before that, he was the safeties coach for Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. So, you're also putting a different position coach there, but you're not going to lose that from him. He's still going to be the one who's in the room. And even if he's not in every single individual position group meeting, he's still going to be there. So I'm excited about that.
I think McDermott said they're going to test it out in a couple of preseason games where Babich calls the plays, but it's going to be much more of a, I don't even want to say back and forth. I think it'll be McDermott will take it and then maybe give it up if he has to, maybe give it back, and kind of be a fluid situation.
Yeah. And that's kind of a nice fallback to have, because sometimes, like, when stuff is not going right, you just need to change something about it. So even if the person who's calling the plays is not like necessarily making bad decisions, just freshen it up. McDermott starts calling the plays. It kind of like, it just freshens something up with the players, right? Yeah. We're talking about not going stale last week as a franchise. I think that not going stale as a team throughout a season is important too. But anyway, I had another like really far out thought. I was like, we have something good going with McDermott as a defensive head coach, right? He's really good at that part. Obviously, the offense has been kind of lacking these past few years. Like, defense has its moments where it's like, you got to do better than that. But I think far and away, the offense was probably more disappointing for what our expectations were for a Josh Allen-led offense last year than the defense was disappointing. Is that fair?
In the playoffs?
I think, I was going to say the answer is probably different in the playoffs versus, the
it's
regular
an interesting,
season.
because it's not a fair way to answer it. Because how you get bounced is often a clear identifier of what's wrong with your team, and we can't get a stop, and then we get a stop, but we can't score. So,
most of the time, it's a clear indicator. Some, you can't look at too small with just one data point to make your big decisions. But anyway, I just had the crazy thought that, like, okay, what, worst case scenario here, like you were saying earlier, Joe Brady's offense does not thrive, and we are looking at some other things. Do you give Joe Brady another year?
Yeah.
Or what happens if things go wrong in New York with the Giants and maybe Brian Daboll's?
No.
I know. But do you think if Brian Daboll got fired, he would come back and he would do the what's it called? What's the guy's name? New England offensive coordinator who kept coming back after years and years.
The
and years
bum
and
who
years.
coached the Raiders, McDaniels.
Yes. Josh McDaniels.
Thank you.
Yeah. Or Josh McDaniels. I can't remember.
There's no way Joe Shen fires him. GM of the.
That's true.
Of the Giants, they're buddies from Buffalo. Like both of them.
Unless they were both ousted, right? Then they're both coming back to Buffalo.
And that'd be awesome. I had Adam Shen's kid as a student, and he was a very nice man when I met him. What did I say?
Adam Shen?
I don't know who that is. Yeah, I met Joe Shane. Yeah. So I had Joe Shen's son as a student when I was teaching at the Y, and good kid, good dad. But same with Dable, good dude from Buffalo. But unless they give him the Leslie Frazier co-head coach or assistant to the head coach, whatever, how
you can put whatever title you want on it, like to have him come back. I just. We're getting way too ahead of ourselves. This is my fault. I brought this up. We don't have to explore this too much. I was just thinking maybe, I'm trying to get the 2020 to 2021 offense back.
Anyway,
whatever way
you got to kiss it goodbye, man. You got to kiss it goodbye. It's never going to be like that again. We'll be talking about those days like the people talk about Jim Kelly's take on days. We might have another version. We've talked about this. It could just be effective in a different way. So, and we haven't even, we've talked about it a little bit. We're not talking about the offense really as a weakness individually in position groups, because if you look around, tight end's good, maybe a top 10 group in the league. Running back, James Cook's a top 5 running back in the league, finished 3rd in yards. Wide receiver is going to be the question mark, and there's talent there. It's how much
it's a lot of question marks.
Not having a top dog. How much is that going to impact you to not be able to give a 10-yard slant, first down, boom, to Stephon Diggs? How much is it, going to hurt everybody else on the offense if they can stack the box because they don't have to bracket a wide receiver? If there's one-on-one coverage everywhere and you have an extra guy, is Josh going to get spied by a linebacker more because you don't have to double somebody? Is this going to hurt him in the run game? Is there going to be more interceptions for us? So the collateral damage of not having Stephon Diggs, I'm not worried about the production. I'm worried about how he's going to get it. They're going to have to manufacture and scheme it up. So I don't think this is a one and done for Brady, because he's going to have to work through all these things too. And Joe Brady doesn't have the complement yet. I think he gets at least one more year. He's got to see Coleman. He's got to try to at least develop Coleman and Kincaid and find out the next step of this offense.
Yeah. And like I said, before in the last episode, it's really, it matters what it looks like. If this is a team that finishes 10-7, but it looks like the trajectory is going upward, of course you keep everybody around. It matters what it looks like, how you finish. But I think that there's no slam dunk 1,000-yard wide receiver on this team. If you had to put money on
Curtis Samuel right now,
I know you're on Curtis Samuel.
I'll bet it right now. I'll pull it up.
I, in my gut, would not put money on that because of his injury history, right? So I would honestly, honest to God, if you had to pick, gun to your head metaphorically,
Curtis Samuel,
one wide receiver, it really over Khalil Shakir. You don't think it's going to okay?
I don't think Shakir is going to get more than 800 probably.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. That's a hot take. I
don't think that's a hot take. The dude is in his, I don't know. 800 yards is a good receiving season. I don't think he should have the expectations to be 1,000-yard receiver. I don't think he is. I don't think he's there. I don't think he has you're talking about injury history. He's not a big dude either. He's fast. Is he going to get enough targets downfield to get to 1,000 yards? Or is he going to have to break these off? Like I said with Samuel, I think Samuel has the benefit of being a threat at all 3 tiers in the field, short, medium, and long, whereas Kincaid might be more of a 1 or 2 trick pony. I mean, his deep touchdown this year was,
You're talking about Shakir?
Yeah.
You said Kincaid there for a second.
Oh, sorry. Shakir. I mean, Shakir's deep touchdown against the Jets, and he had 1 against the Steelers, right? He had 2. I mean, they're seam passes, and it's, anybody could, I feel like, I don't want to say anybody could do that because he made a nice move, but if you put Samuel in that spot, I think he could make that. I don't know. I think it's quite the expectation on Khalil Shakir, and I don't think it's fair for him in the middle of his development. We'll see. I'd love to be wrong, but for me, it's 1,000-yard receiver is Curtis Samuel. Can I tell you something too, John? You'll have an opinion on this.
I'm looking something up at the same time too. Okay. So hit me.
I saw the odds for Josh Allen's passing prop. They just came out today. Do you know what the number is?
For Josh Allen's passing prop?
Yes.
Let's see. Where did he finish last year? 4,000.
I'm not telling you anything. You got to get to this number on your own.
The over-under. I'm going to say 4,200.
You would be wrong by a wide margin.
Okay.
I'm not going to tell you one way or another.
Well, I was gonna say some of these like season long over unders. Sometimes it feels like they set them low because obviously with the injury percentage, sometimes if you don't play, you obviously can't get to that. So I'm gonna go lower.
I'm not gonna tell you
3,900 yards.
You, sir, are not correct.
You're not.
I'm not going to tell you one way or another.
lower?
You have to decide if you're going to double down on lower or if you think you're way off and you have to go higher. It's just a fun game we're playing.
Okay, 4,600 yards.
You, sir, would not be right, and you're going in the wrong direction.
3,600.
Still like 3,750, according to Mike Shope on the radio today.
That seems low.
Yep.
He's broken that mark every year since his second year, right?
Yep. They said that would be his worst season since the Houston playoff season. And they think Steph Diggs not being there and the run heavy approach will slow him down. And they did factor in that he hasn't missed a game yet. So maybe he would be due to miss one or two here and there. But I think, I'll bet on it right now. I'd go hammer that over. Give me Shakir over 1,000 yards, Allen over 3,700. Let me parlay it. I don't know if you can do that anywhere. If you can, if I can do that, call me. Call me DraftKings. But I thought that was wildly low, and I think Vegas does get close sometimes. And I think if their thesis, they're in their boardroom and they're writing. I would love to be in this room, right? Who makes these props, right? It has to be a conversation. There has to be a prop team. They're in a boardroom. They're going star player to star player. Okay, Josh Allen, thesis for 4,000 yards or higher, thesis for less than 4,000 yards. And it's like a debate. Somebody wins that debate and they set that total. So I think that would be a fun room to be in, but the low side obviously won. So, Vegas isn't stupid, but we are. So hammer the over.
All right. I might have to search something really quick because I want to look at Khalil Shakir's kind of projection. Joe Marino hasn't done his full yardage projections, but the other day I was listening and he was doing target projections. So if we look at these targets here, let me see. So I'm going to pull up Khalil Shakir's last season stats. 39 receptions, 45 targets for 611 yards.
Okay.
So that's the baseline, right?
Yeah.
So he averaged 4 targets a game under Joe Brady, which obviously was up over what he averaged in Ken Dorsey's offense. So if he averaged 4 targets a game this year, that would put him at 60 targets for the year, which is obviously an increase over 45. Joe Marino has him at 90 targets for the full season estimated. And
does he have the other? Can you give me the target breakdown in his predictions for everybody? Do you have that available?
I don't have that readily available. No, I had to listen to that. I had to re-listen to that part of the podcast to remember the numbers. But I think he had Kincaid at like 120 targets for the year. That's obviously leading the pack and then going down from there. But he has Curtis Samuel at less targets than Khalil Shakir in his predictions.
I don't agree with that.
And that obviously that 90 targets per year would be 5.29 per game. So at that rate, let's do some quick math here. Let's say Khalil Shakir, what was his yards per reception last year? 15.7, which is pretty high. Yeah. So let's dial that back to 14 because usually when volume goes up, sometimes that'll go down. Let's see. So 14 times 90 targets. How many? Wait, let's see. 45 targets, 39 receptions, which is really good. Let's take that as a fraction, or let's say 90 targets down to 75 receptions. Does that sound fair?
Yeah.
75 receptions. So 75 receptions times 14 yards per catch average would be 1,050 yards. So right over that 1,000-yard mark. So it's possible. I think that I feel like all these guys are going to be like, there's going to be a lot of 7, 6, 500-yard receivers on this team. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that breaks down because you're right. There's going to be no Stephon Diggs get to 1,000 yards at game 12 kind of receiver or anything like that.
Or there is, and his name's Curtis Samuel. We'll just find out.
Right. Yeah. If you haven't figured out, Brando's pretty high on this Curtis Samuel train.
Yes, sir. I just think he's going to have a better season than Khalil Shakir. Who would you pick to have the better season? Khalil Shakir or Curtis Samuel? And if you want to argue Dalton Kincaid, it's not on the table. We're talking wide receivers here because there's a potential that Kincaid could do better than both of them. But I think the veteran here, if he is healthy, is Curtis Samuel. He's a better route runner. He can run more routes. He's faster. I think he fits this offense better. So.
All right. That's fair. Yeah. And Joe Marino cited familiarity with Josh Allen as Khalil Shakir's biggest strength because he's the only wide receiver on this roster right now who's ever caught a pass from Josh Allen in a game. So
yeah, familiarity is not all that it's cracked up to be, right? Zemgus Girgensons was familiar with Buffalo, and how did that treat us? So just
counterpoint taken.
Familiarity is only for him too. It's really only like. What did you say? He had 39 receptions this year?
Yes.
That's such a small number. And then, maybe 10 from the year before. So you're looking at half a season for Diggs is the total experience that they have together. So it's less than, 50 catches. That's 8 games with Stephon Diggs. So it's not that much familiarity.
That's true. But there's a trust factor there where early on in the season, he might get a little extra production compared to somebody who doesn't necessarily have that trust. But you're right. I think that quality is probably overstated a little bit. And it's really just going to come down to who's healthy, who produces. And I think that Curtis Samuel's, I don't want to say his floor might be higher because obviously there's a huge range of seasons that we could see from Curtis Samuel. I mean, all the way down from 300 yards and injured, less than that and injured, or 400 yards and then 200 on the ground and you're at 600 all-purpose yards or something like that.
So disappointing if that happens.
That's totally possible, but I don't want to say he has a higher floor because that exists, but also he's going to get additional touches in the run game. So if he averages one carry per game, that might boost the numbers a little bit. But
he's going maybe a little higher than Shakir is in fantasy drafts too, which is interesting. We're getting into that time of year again to see those rankings come out. And Buffalo is very intriguing this year. James Cook is higher up. Josh Allen's QB 2/1/ should just always be QB1 because he always finishes as QB1. But where those guys are getting drafted, it's Samuel and then Shakir and Coleman. They're all close together. I don't think their production's going to be close together. I think Samuel's get the dual threat ability to run some touchdowns. And I think if you're drafting a Bills wide receiver, it should be Dalton Kincaid and Curtis Samuel. If you can get Shakir later, he's being overvalued by this Bills boost of the Josh Allen quarterback. I'm not hating. I just think that there's other abilities on the roster that can shine more.
Should fantasy owners trade Curtis Samuel before he gets injured in week 12?
If you can get, the Bills just got rid of it, but there's no salary cap in fantasy football unless you're in an auction draft. But if you can trade Curtis Samuel and you snag yourself an AJ Brown or a Tyreek Hill and it's part of a package, maybe you sample, you put together Samuel and a running back for somebody elite. You're always open for deals. That's fantasy football.
Yeah. Well, final thoughts. Bill's biggest weekness. Do you have we learned anything on today's episode? Probably no. I mean, that's probably a bad question. I have to learn it.
Here's the exit ticket. Brandon's still high on Curtis Samuel. That's it.
Yeah. That's pretty much it.
I'll be curious because we could be talking about this, and McDermott could be having the defense playing great, and the offense could be struggling. And then we're talking as the receivers being the biggest weakness. We could see that the D line's not getting any pressure, and it's putting the defense in a tough position. We could call that their biggest weakness. We could see Joe Brady's play calling suck and call that the biggest weakness. We're going to have to see how this plays out, but it'll be intriguing for sure. And training camp's right around the corner. You'll get a little sneak peek, maybe what is to come in the joint practices in the preseason. And then it's the real deal before you know it.
Yeah. Well, hope it comes fast.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you guys can find us on all platforms at Not Buff Podcast. Check us out on YouTube, Instagram, all that good stuff. Hopefully we'll be back next week. If not, we might have some weeks off here this month. I know I'm going to be traveling a little bit. Brandon's going to be traveling a little bit. So we'll see. We're not going to force you guys to listen to Pat do a solo episode because I don't think the world's ready for that.
He just does one episode, gets a full-time deal on WGR.
Right. No, it'd be a deal on something, but I don't think it'd be a deal on WGR. That's funny. All right. Well, peace out, guys, and go Bills.
Happy 4th of July. Go Bills.
Oh, yeah. Happy 4th of July.
Yeah.